this again. All right, well, welcome to another episode of Jeep Torque. And today I'm going to be going over temperature wise for your Jeep. When is it okay to keep it too cool, and when is it okay if it gets too hot? So, my obsession with keeping my Jeep at a certain temperature, keeping it cool, started about a year into owning the Jeep. As I started doing off road with it, I was up north and I would take it to go riding for the first time. It's always like you don't want to scratch it. It's a brand new car. You don't want to scratch it up. So I took it off road and I noticed right away my engine temperature jumping up to around 228. And if you're just looking at the little meter there in front of you, in my case, it's 2017, it would just be past the middle bar for your engine temperature, just about a quarter past that, which is usually around the 228, 230 range if you have some sort of dashboard connected to it into your ODB 2 port. Using like a super chip or Diablo, one of those that displays it, it'll probably be around that 228. And I'll get into the super chip that I ended up installing as well. So back to the keeping it cool with the Jeep. So the first thing I did, because my obsession just kept growing and growing, like, okay, I want to keep this thing cool. I knew I was going to move down south eventually and move up from the pretty good temperature for a Jeep up north. It's good to be cold, that cold air coming in, the intake sucking it in. So any of that will help it. So when I finally moved down to Florida, Southwest Florida, obviously the temperature is a bit different. So when I took it off road here in the Picayune area, which is connected to the Everglades, completely different off road experience. You're dealing with sugar sand, you're dealing with the heat, and then out of nowhere it'll start raining. You got some mud pools. So that engine's really going to work its way, especially the 3.6. So the first thing that I did was go ahead and change out the thermostat. That's like the easiest thing you could do. The stock thermostat will open up at 220 degrees. So basically what that means, it's going to take the coolant from your radiator, and as your engine heats up, as soon as that engine temperature gets to 220 degrees, the little thermostat in there is going to pop open and let that coolant flow through the engine block to start cooling it down. So there's different types of thermostats out there, and Mishimoto has one that is specifically will open up at 180 degrees or 190 degrees, or you could go with the stock one at around 220. So I decided to go with the 180 degrees, just like you're seeing here on the screen. And they didn't have an aluminum type of housing at the time. This is fairly new. I want to say it's about 2 years old when they came out with the aluminum thermostat housing. So I initially just picked up the thermostat itself. And it's an easy thing to do on your own. You are going to make a little bit of a mess with the coolant. And you should then bleed it after, go through and get the bubbles out. But it's not a hard process. You could find the steps on YouTube. So any average person could do this in the garage, not a problem. So that was the first thing I did. And it seemed to work out pretty well. So I kept it that way. So that was the first thing. And I did notice a degree change, it changed a little bit. I don't know. I want to say it went down probably about 8%, 7%, because it was opening up quicker. The one thing you got to be cautious there, what happened to me is it did start to trigger a P0128 DTC code. And basically what that means is it thinks that the thermostat is stuck. It's too cold. The engine's running too cold, believe it or not. They could run too cold. 3.6s and like all other engines, they're made to run at a certain temperature. So if it's too cold, the transmission could get a little bit hotter than your engine. You don't want that to ever happen. You always want your transmission temp to be lower than your engine temp, always. So that was one of the things that I did run into on certain days where it was a bit cooler. When I say cooler, around 78, 75 here in Southwest Florida. So then it kept progressing from there. I ended up now changing my radiator out. I'm like, all right, what else can I do next? So I changed out my radiator and I ended up going with an AFE originally. And after I install this, and it's a bit thicker, you got to do some cutting to your little plastic piece that's currently over the stock radiator. So I did all that work, and then about a week into it, I started to smell all this fluid, and lo and behold, the soldering along the side here that came from the manufacturing side had a defect. So I ended up sending that back, and I was kind of frustrated with the whole process. It wasn't that it wasn't hard to change this out; I was just frustrated. So I bit the bullet and I'm like, screw it, let me go with the high end of high end. So I ended up installing a Mishimoto, still a great radiator, and it's still in there today, till this day, and working very well. So with that being said, I had the thermostat at this point, which is the 180 degree that opens up. And then I went ahead and had the aluminum radiator. So that was about 2 years into owning the Jeep. And then about 2 years ago, I want to say, I went ahead and I changed out and I put this aluminum thermostat housing one that Mishimoto offered. And I made a video on this as well. So anything that you could do to remove any of the plastic pieces within a Jeep and keep it all aluminum, obviously it's going to cool it down. And again, my obsession with keeping my Jeep cool may be a little bit more higher than the average person, but that's just the way I want it to be. And when I go off road, so that combination of having the Mishimoto with the aluminum housing worked out very well for me. So when I went to go do my ignition coils, I said, screw it. I was reading about the lower plenum because you're going to have to take this off to remove your spark plugs and ignition coils. So I was like, while I'm in there, I'm going to go ahead and remove the plastic lower plenum. That's what the stock one is. And I installed this all aluminum. And what that does is as the air flows through each one of these holes from your top plenum, your top intake, coming from your air intake, and then it goes in through your throttle body, and it'll go in through these holes here. Anything that can keep that cool, you're going to get more horsepower. You're going to get a nicer feel on the throttle when you take off. So with that all being said, the Jeep now stays at a good, I'll be at a light sitting there, and I'll post some videos. I have some pictures of this, and it'll sit at 186 on the temperature for the engine, and then my transmission is at 145. And the reason my transmission is I actually installed an external transmission cooler as well from Mishimoto, and I adapted a fan that I have on a switch inside my Jeep that I could turn on and off. So when I'm off-roading, you're not driving to get that wind in there to cool down your transmission cooler. So I actually built a little tiny fan. I found the perfect fan for it, adapted it to the front. I've had people ask me, hey, what is that? Is that for do you have a supercharger in there? But it's actually cooling down my transmission, which works out very well. Something I could show anyone how to do, and I wired it myself, and I just put a nice little simple switch. You can install some sort of heat sensor so it triggers on by itself, but I didn't want that. I wanted to be able to be off-road, and you're kind of going slow over rocks, through mud, and you just turn that thing on, and it does drop my transmission temperature down by about 10, 12%, which is great. So again, to highlight some of the things that I've done, and I'll continue this conversation with my obsession of keeping my Jeep engine cool. So I changed the thermostat, and then eventually the thermostat housing with an aluminum one from Mishimoto, changed the radiator out from the stock one, which has plastic sides to it. And I installed the AFE, which ended up not being good for me. I sent that back, manufacturer defect. I was over it. So I installed the Mishimoto, and then I put the lower aluminum plenum. And in that combination there, I have noticed a difference in horsepower. I want to say that I'm probably running close to around that 300 range. I think stock is around 265, 285, I think. But so far, no issues. I get a great response on it, and it's something that I highly recommend. And it's fairly easy to do. The plenum is a little bit different story. That's going to take you some time to take that, remove it, and put it in there. There is some folks out there that have the upper part of the intake on the 3.6 where they'll sell it to you with the holes a little bit bigger to get some more air in. So there is an option out there. I didn't go with it. I still have the stock plastic intake on top, if you will, the upper plenum. Eventually, I was going to put a supercharger in there, and I still might, but I'm deciding if I'm going to do that or eventually just swap out, because I do love the Jeep, and swap it out with a V8, put an LS engine in there. That might be my next move. So any questions or anything you have regarding your Jeep and you want to make it cooler, or any of the steps that I did, please feel free to reach out to me either on TikTok, or you could email mario@jeeptorque.com, or visit my website, jeeptorque.com, and I'll gladly get back to you for sure with any questions. And no question is a dumb one. So yeah, feel free to reach out to me, and I'll catch you on the next one. Thank you.